Education in Ivory Coast continues to face many challenges. The literacy rate for adults remains low. In 2000, it was estimated that only 48.7% of the total population was literate. Many children between 6 and 10 years are not enrolled in school, mainly children of poor families. The majority of students in secondary education are male. At the end of secondary education, students can sit the baccalaureate examination. The country has universities in Abidjan, Bouaké, and in Yamoussoukro. Education system. The education system comprised 3 stages. Primary school lasted 6 years, leading to a certificate of primary studies. Secondary school lasted 7 years, leading to a certificate or baccalaureate. University education, available only in Abidjan, culminated in a university degree. A large number of technical and teacher training institutions also provided post-primary and post-secondary education. There was no system of adult education, although many adults attended night courses or, in rural areas, received literacy and other instruction via radio. Most public schools were tuition-free, although students pay an entrance fee and buy uniforms. Most supplies were free, and some students received government scholarships, usually in return for a period of government employment after graduation. In 1980, approximately 14% of primary schools and 29% of secondary schools were private. Most of these were Catholic, staffed by religious and lay teachers, with salaries partially subsidized by government funding. Catholic schools operated primarily in the south and east, but were also located throughout the country. Religious instruction was not permitted in government schools. Quranic schools were common in the north and were tolerated, but not supported, by the government. Some students attended both public and Quranic schools. The school year was divided into 3 terms, beginning in September and separated by short Christmas and Easter holidays and a 2-month summer recess. The average week consisted of approximately 30 hours of classes, Monday through Saturday morning. Most instruction encouraged mental discipline more than analytical thinking or creativity, by emphasizing rote memorization and oral recitation. Primary education. Approximately 9.5 million pupils attended primary school in 1987, representing about 75% of boys and 50% of girls below age 15. Primary school enrollments increased at a rate of about 7.2% per year from 1960 to 1980, climbing to 9.1% between 1976 and 1980. This rate slowed after 1980, averaging 4.2% from 1981 to 1984 and 2.2% in 1999. Children entered primary school at the age of 7 or 8 and passed through 6 grades, divided into preparatory, elementary, and intermediate levels. In the first 6 months, students mastered French, the language of instruction. Classes in reading, writing, and arithmetic were taught, gradually supplemented by history, geography, natural sciences, music, art, and physical education. Rural schools also required students to work in school gardens and learn basic agricultural methods. Standard school leaving exams led to the Certificate of Elementary Education and determined entrance to secondary institutions. Secondary education. About 250,000 students, or about 19% of primary school graduates, attended government-funded secondary schools in 1987. Most of those preparing for university attended a college or lycée, both of which included 7 years of study divided into 2 cycles. Significant differences between these 2 institutions almost disappeared in the decades following their introduction by the French, but the lycée was generally administered by the national government and the college by the municipal government with national funding. This qualification generally allowed them to continue at the college or lycée, enter a teacher training institution, or find an entry-level job in commerce or government. After the second cycle of 3 years of study, graduates earned the baccalaureate. which indicated a level of learning roughly equivalent to 1 or 2 years of university study in the United States. In Ivory Coast, as in France, it qualified a student for university entrance. Secondary school enrollments grew at a rate of about 11% per year from 1960 to 1984, but that rate has declined since 1984. The dropout rate was especially high for girls, who made up only 18% of the student body during the last 2 years of secondary school. An average of 1/4 of all secondary students received the baccalaureate. Complementary courses were the most common type of alternative secondary education, administered as 4-year programs to improve the academic education of those who did not qualify for college or lycée. Complementary courses were established during the 1950s, when expanding educational opportunities was a high priority, and they were located throughout the country to compensate for the urban bias in secondary education. Complementary courses often provided a combination of academic and practical training, leading to an elementary certificate or the BEPC, and enabled some students to enter the second cycle at a college or lycée, or a vocational training institution. Additional secondary-level courses were administered by religious organizations, most often the Catholic Church. These courses consisted of 7 years of study divided into 2 cycles, with a certificate of completion awarded after each cycle. Teacher training was available, often as an alternative to academic university preparation, at a variety of post-primary levels. Secondary-level teacher training could lead to a B certificate and admission to a normal school, which might also be attended by students who left LYCE or colleges after the first 4 years of study. Vocational training, attended by 47,000 students in 1982-83, was available at a variety of post-primary institutions. This training included courses in agriculture, engineering, public works, transportation management, secretarial and commercial subjects, and building trades. Graduates often worked as apprentices or pursued further training at higher technical institutes. Higher education. The National University of Côte d'Ivoire, which was founded as the Center for Higher Education at Abidjan in 1959 and became the University of Abidjan in 1964, had an enrollment of 18,732 in 1987. Of this number, about 10,000 were Ivoirians and 3,200 were women. Still heavily dependent on French assistance, it included faculties of law, sciences, and letters and schools of agriculture, public works, administration, and fine arts. Other institutions of higher learning, known as grandes écoles, awarded certificates of training in specialized fields in cooperation with, but not as a part of, the National University. Teachers. In the mid-1980s, 5 classes of teachers were distinguished by their educational preparation and salary level. Professors, who taught at the secondary or university level, assistant professors at the secondary level, and instituteurs adjoint, and monitors at the primary level. Teachers' salaries were generally higher than salaries of civil servants with similar qualifications in the mid-1980s, although many people still left teaching for more lucrative professions. The government responded to teacher shortages with a variety of training programs and short courses and by recruiting expatriates to teach at the secondary and post-secondary levels. Teachers were organized into a number of unions, most of them incorporated into the government-controlled Central Union Federation. The National Union of Secondary School Teachers of Ivory Coast, SYNESCI, and 2 smaller unions remained outside the UGTCI and were outspoken in their criticism of government educational policies and educational finances in particular. Despite this tradition of criticism, many government officials achieved political office through leadership positions in the teachers' union. Problems in education. During the early 1980s, Ivory Coast spent a higher share of its gross national product and of its national budget on education than any other country in the world, although this served as an indication of the nation's high regard for education. Expatriate teachers' salaries accounted for a disproportionate share of current expenditures, reducing the benefits to the nation itself. Generous scholarships for secondary school students also reduced funds available for younger children. The Ministry of National Education and Scientific Research assigned highest priority to problems of financing educational development and reducing the number of school dropouts. Reducing regional inequities was also important. In 1986, enrollments in the South averaged about 4 times those in the North. The government employed innovative methods to improve the education system, including the use of televised instruction in primary schools in the 1970s, a project that was abandoned as too expensive. Computers and automated data processing equipment were being used at the National University in 1987 and were to be introduced at lower levels of the educational system by 1990. By the late 1980s, the government was also producing its own textbooks, previously purchased in France, to reflect local rather than foreign cultural values. The internal efficiency of the education system was relatively low, partly because of the large number of students who repeated courses and the high dropout level. The number of school-aged children was expected to grow at an average annual rate of 4.3% by 1995, increasing the school-aged population by 50%. Unfortunately, teacher training programs could not keep pace with these changes, and educational planners were in particular demand. The link between education and employment was also weak, exacerbated by the economic recession of the 1980s. Graduates, in effect, expected more than society could give them. As in many countries, academic institutions and personnel often annoy government officials with their outspoken criticism of national policies. A number of mechanisms are used to co-opt or intimidate dissident leaders. Although a few of their criticisms have been received favorably and have produced policy changes, some outspoken teachers have been offered government jobs, in effect to receive the brunt of criticism they have generated. Some students have been expelled from the university. The campus was closed down following anti-government demonstrations in 1982, and campus organizations were banned. Secondary school teachers who protested against the elimination of their housing benefits in 1983 found their professional organizations banned as well.